updates or changes to the agenda by staff or commission members? Seeing none, a motion to approve, please.
So motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Perfect. Thanks, Jill. Minutes, we have those from the February 28th meeting. Any additions or changes to those minutes? If not, a motion to approve.
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Beth, okay. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Perfect. We will move on to public hearings, and Karin.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair, and good evening, Planning Commission. Our first case this evening is a rezone. Okay. That is, there we go. Is a rezone. So it is a portion of property that's currently a quadplex. So it's addressed as 432 to 438 Western Avenue. The reason for the request is for 0.21 acres. The property owner requested an administrative parcel split. So we do allow basically minor subdivisions administratively without going through the full subdivision process. If it's just something like splitting a parcel in two or changing the boundaries between parcels. So this property owner requested that. But essentially due to the lot size of the proposed new lot, if the rezone was not approved prior to that split taking place, the parcel wouldn't be developable under those R4 standards. So as a contingency to approving that split at the administrative level, we're requiring the property owner to seek that rezoning approval first from the R4 multiple family residence district to B2, the service business district. This is an aerial map of the surrounding area. The thick black line is just the parcel as it is today, and that shaded orange area is the area that is requested to be rezoned to B2. And as far as surrounding uses, so if you see those two green roofed buildings to the north and northeast, those are both a quadplex building, so they have 4 rental units and they're 2 stories. To the southeast there, that other green roofed building, that's a 1-story office building. And out to the west across Western Avenue, you can see the construction going on. That is a veterinary clinic. And this is the zoning map that it currently is today. So the north part of this parcel, the part that's not shaded, that would remain in the R4 district. The shaded area would become B2. And you can see there's that B2 both across Western Avenue and adjacent to the parcel as well. So just to talk a little bit about the B2 zoning requirements were this parcel to be rezoned to B2. We do have some standards that kind of limit the development that could occur on this parcel. So one of those is that only 40% of a lot could be covered with buildings, which with the parcel that's proposed about 9,100 square feet, that's more or less 3,600 square feet of floor plate that you could have, which is similar in size to that office building that's just sort of to the southeast. That floor print is approximately 3,100 square feet. The only thing is the maximum building height would be 45%. So someone could build a couple of stories if they wanted. And any conditional uses that would be on the property, of course, would still need to go through the normal conditional use permit process. So if there was something that Planning Commission in the future, depending on the use, wanted to put some additional conditions on to protect some of the residential buildings that are in the area, that would be an opportunity to do so. As far as public comments and the staff recommendation, the notice of the hearing was published in the Daily Journal and mailed to the surrounding property owners. So prior to the public hearing today, Barbara J. Smith, who resides at 400 Kennedy Park Circle, which is the condo building that's just sort of up to the northeast there, that sort of red-roofed building. She was inquiring about what the end use of the property would be, which staff informed her they did not know at this time, and whether or not her property taxes or property value would be affected, which as staff we can never say. We're not assessors, we're not real estate valuers, and property taxes or value could increase for any other reason. So that was the only public inquiry that was received. There were no internal City of Fergus Falls comments, and based on the findings that were listed on the staff report, staff are recommending approval of the rezoning request. So that is staff's presentation, and I know that the property owner is with us here today as well, if there are any questions for him too. Thank you.
Any questions from the commission for Karen? Okay. Seeing none, we will open the public hearing. Does anyone want to speak to this? Are there any questions for the property owner from the commission? Okay. We will close the public hearing. Do we have a motion, or is there more discussion the commission would like to entertain?
I'll make a motion to approve the rezoning from R4 to R2 at 432 to 438 Western Avenue.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. We'll move on to presentation number 2 on Wayne Enterprises.
All right, so this second case is a variance request. It also is a case that came up with a request to do some administrative parcel line adjustments. But since we have required other property owners in B6, such as the mall, to obtain variances to plat existing buildings not meeting setbacks in lot area, it was decided that it's only fair, to apply that same standard to the administrative splits as well. So currently, all the lots that are, in this area between the former gas station at the former Sunmart and the former Sunmart building itself are all under the common ownership of Wayne Enterprises LLC. And that property owner is looking to consolidate so that the gas station lot is all on one lot. Its parking area is currently kind of spread out between 3 lots for the purposes of selling that lot for redevelopment into office space. So the remainder of the 2 parcels would remain with that former Sunmart building with that parking area, which is currently undergoing some redevelopment, as you may know. And so the variance that's requested for this parcel A is for the B6 setbacks and lot area requirements. You may recall from last month, those minimum standards are a 50-foot setback from all property lines. So this new parcel would be about 34 feet on the east to the property line and 40 feet to the south to the new property line. And the proposed new lot size is 1.1 acres, whereas the minimum required is 4 acres. So this is just the aerial view of the property. So as far as the surrounding uses, to the east there is the car dealership. To the south is that former Sunmart building that's currently has some, so those light industrial uses such as the warehousing for a cabinet shop and a laminate building materials shop. And to the west is the former Kmart building. And then just to the north, Lincoln Avenue right-of-way is a little bit wide, so it doesn't show up, but there's a multi-tenant commercial building as well as a mechanic shop as well. After a conversation with a member of the public this morning, I thought that this additional graphic might be helpful just to show what the new proposed lot would look like. So it's that sort of cross-hatched area is the shape that we'd actually be taking from, a little bit of the two parcels, if you see in those, kind of the L-shaped one and the square. So the middle line would kind of go away, and that southern line would move just to kind of encompass that concrete drive fully. And that would be the new lot. Does that look right, Ryan? Great.
Yes.
And this is the surrounding zoning map. So on the west and the south, it's that sub-regional shopping center district, which is pretty typical of that side of town. And then across the street is the B2 Service Business District, and to the north of Lincoln Avenue as well. And no rezoning is proposed, and that office space redevelopment use is something that would be permitted in B6 as well. As far as public comments, prior to the staff report, nothing was received, but prior to the public hearing today, property owner Lori Mullen visited staff in person just to seek some clarifying information about what that actual parcel boundary was going to be looking like, and whether the parking lots would remain with that former Sunmark building, which I think is clarified hopefully by that graphic earlier. As far as internal City of Fergus Falls staff comments, there were none. And so based on the findings that were listed in the staff report, staff recommend approval of that variance request with no conditions. And the proposed purchaser of the property is here today if you have any questions. Otherwise, that is staff's presentation. Thank you.
Any questions or clarification for staff? If not, we'll open the public hearing. If you'd like to speak on this, state your name and your address for the record, please.
Lori Mullen, for both Anderson Trust and Renaissance. The Kmart property entails two properties. So this morning when I stopped in to see Ms. Flom, I was confused on what I was mailed as for what the lot division would be. Just wanting to state that Sunmark needs to keep those additional, maybe they could put the map back up there, those additional parcels.
I think she needs the
closest
remote to put the map back
Yeah,
up.
I just the keyboard.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
You're looking for the map that's not in the packet, maybe? The new map, Karen, maybe? That one, yep, probably.
I didn't
That one?
get that, yeah.
Or
So,
the white one?
So this, she was one of the property owners that received the notification. And so in addition to just the copy of the daily notice verbiage, we also just include an aerial of the affected properties just to assist people receiving the notice. So these parcels were highlighted.
Okay.
so with breaking these parcels off from Sunmart being, 4 or 5, 6 parcels or whatever it is there, that the easement stays open between the back of the Kmart lot and going out to St. Andrews, that the Sunmart building is, we were out there last night and it looks like it's only 33 feet from, or 30 feet from the sidewalk, so that those other parcels would always remain with Sunmart. When looking at, we walked the property line too and noticed that it looked like one of the flags had been moved. So the person that did the survey is meeting me tomorrow. The sign for Sunmart is on our parcel at the Kmart property. So I guess my concern is, as we start whittling away the Sunmart property, that there remains enough parking for a 53,000 square foot building. The traffic flow is changing. Ryan said it wouldn't be, but as people come in off of St. Andrews to their service trucks to get back to Wayne's, traffic flow has changed in there. Semis are having a more difficult time. And then I wasn't sure if the little piece that Ryan is purchasing, is that 1.1 acres now, or is that what it was with the 3 parcels?
That's after the fact, yeah. So that itself, the piece that's being divided out.
Divided out is the, okay,
So that shaded area is 1.1.
okay. Yeah, so those are my concerns, and Ryan had answered one of the other, that the environmental was done on it, so, thank you.
Environmental being the tanks are removed or what?
Correct.
Okay, okay, thank you. Does anyone else want to speak? No, okay. If anyone have questions for developer, purchaser, owner, neighbor? Nope. Okay, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. I guess I have one question. Is there's an easement on this parcel, or where is there an easement?
The easement, can you bring up where it comes up to Kmart?
So the easement's not on the one that's getting divided off?
Correct.
No, so
There is an easement, but it has nothing to do with the property to the west.
Okay, I just was confused on where the easement was.
So what I got was showing those 3 is what I had gotten in the mail. So, this really needs to stay parking for Kmart with the size of the building, or for Sunmark with the size of the building.
And that is the
And-
intention,
and that
that's
is
why
the
it's
intention.
divided out the way it is.
Yeah, but that's not what I got in my packet, so.
Okay, so the easement is in front of, the old Sunmar building has nothing to do with this piece? Or, right, I mean, it
I'm
doesn't,
just saying as they're breaking it down.
Right.
That,
okay,
they
okay.
don't forget that is.
Okay, okay. I was just trying to figure out where the easement was. Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns? I mean, in the past, when we've done breaking off of things, taxes, utilities are current, things like that. I mean, I know to do a break off, the taxes have to be, but utilities, that's just been a standing thing we've done and the council has done, and I would assume they are, but I would assume that that will get handled on the council level.
If you wanted to add those conditions, you could.
I'm right in that we have history on that, right?
Yep, it's
Okay.
been done, but you would need to add those conditions, as they're not currently in the staff report and findings.
Okay. No objection to those conditions? I mean, we've done it for everything for the mall, haven't we? You have any objection by developers for conditions on that, just to stay the same?
They're all correct,
Right,
so.
right, yeah. I just so we know no one says we did it for the mall and not for the next people. That's my only concern. Any other thoughts, questions?
I'll just offer a comment that I fully support working with the council and the planning commission on the redevelopment of a lot of these properties in Fergus Falls. So thank you for taking some action on it and using what's currently there for redevelopment and repurposing it. I think it's a good direction for the city to head.
I make a motion to approve with the added conditions of being current on utilities and property tax.
Okay, do we have a second?
I will second that.
They're all seconding. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion pass. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next public hearing. Maybe this isn't even a public hearing. Is this a public?
It is
It
a
is,
public
yes.
hearing, yes. So this is our last item. So this was the transitional housing, so, just for the record, and anyone in attendance or watching who may be curious, this was the outcome of, it started back in July of last year. A community organization, Welcome House, was looking to build, some transitional housing that would kind of fill a community need. And they were unable to pursue their concept that they were looking to do because they would have too many unrelated individuals living in a building together in the R1 district, which is our one family residence district. And so the language that's under consideration today was sort of a result of some iterations between Planning Commission and finally a joint Planning Commission and City Council subcommittee to find a way to maybe accommodate some of these maybe more unique or non-traditional housing types in the community while still making sure that they, kind of blend into the neighborhood. And so the language today we looked at just sort of informally at the last meeting to see if there were any comments or questions or concerns from Planning Commission members. And then we just decided, as the body to refer that today to a public hearing. So I'll just briefly summarize kind of the three major additions that are proposed to the zoning code as part of this update. And usually our normal process with Planning Commission cases and recommendations, those just go on to the next council agenda as a consent agenda item, which means that they're not discussed by the City Council unless a member specifically pulls them off for more discussion. But we're the Planning Commission to refer this amendment for approval tonight. We would actually skip this next City Council meeting. We'd like to take this just as a discussion item. City Council hasn't really seen or done much with this since October. So since it is kind of a little bit out of the scope of what the Planning Commission might usually send, we just want to take that opportunity to have some discussion and have that feedback instead of just referring it to the consent agenda. So that's kind of the only thing that might be a little bit different about this case. So we have essentially three parts. So this first part would just be adding a definition for what is transitional housing. So the definition part of our zoning code, it's just there to basically explain these are how we intend these words to be, interpreted. And so that's the first piece. So it just says that it would be a residential facility that's operated from some specific type of agency or organization. So basically as a way so that something like a dorm, couldn't be created under something and calling it transitional housing. They stay, basically at least for 30 days, up to 2 years. So it's not something like what the HRA is proposing where it's their permanent residence, they live there, they receive services. The intention is to sort of help these people, to maybe stabilize and then go on to other sort of traditional housing in the community. There may be services provided that are either at the location of the transitional housing or maybe they link them to other social services in the community. And it's very clear that transitional housing doesn't refer to those sort of state and federally protected facilities that are kind of have a different path towards permissions. Our second addition would be where it actually spells out the requirements for the conditional use permit. So the intention sort of with the subcommittee was that no matter the intensity of the use, it would be something that would be a conditional use in any residential district. And we also have another pathway for any industrial district as well. So some of the big things that came up would just be that the proposed number of occupants is safe for whatever size of the building that can accommodate, that there's adequate off-street parking, which we'll get to in the next slide. There's adequate staffing and management, which I know we talked a little bit about the last meeting, kind of being intentionally a little bit open-ended. So that could be sort of evaluated at the application stage by the Planning Commission and City Council. And also, that some uses might need maybe 24/7 management, some might not. And that also those decisions might be better left up to the actual licensing agencies for those uses. We have the requirement that the transitional housing would be registered with the city's rental inspection program. And just for some clarifying information, the rental registration program does have an exemption for certain types of uses, which would basically, instead of having to be inspected by the city, if they're inspected by like the county or the state, all we do is we just collect the information of an emergency contact. And finally, it spells out a pathway for revoking the conditional use permit. So otherwise, conditional use permits run with the land. So this provides a way through the city's ability to sort of go through the planning commission and city council process to revoke a conditional use permit if someone's just sort of not operating within the safe confines of their licensing and other requirements. And finally, we did add a new parking requirement as well. So it would be 1 parking space for each employee and 1 parking space for each 2 persons based on however the facility is designed for its maximum occupants. And I've spoken with other staff members and the city attorney. If folks have wanted a parking reduction in the past, they've had to apply for a variance, and that's the mechanism that we've used to allow for parking reductions. So if someone was able to come and make the case that, you know, we've done this in other communities, only 1 in 10 residents has a car, you know, that would be something that they would be able, you know, to go through the process and ask for a reduction. But otherwise, starting with a standard is probably, you know, a good idea, so everyone kind of has the same baseline. So those were the 3 additions that we would be looking at for the zoning code. I'm happy to take any questions or discussion. Otherwise, that's the summary.
Any questions?
Not a question, just a comment. I'll have to excuse my lawyer brain. So when it says 1 parking space for each employee, should we be a little more specific, because they might have like 9 employees total, but they don't need 9 spaces because there's only 2 of them working at a time?
Or like full-time equivalent? Or
Oh, sure. I think what we use other places in the parking requirements is per each shift or per each major shift.
So that's defined somewhere else, or that would.
Or we could use that similar language and just plug it in if that's the clarification needed.
Liquid for each on-duty employee.
Mhm.
Something like that.
Yep, I like that. Any other thoughts, questions?
What is the reasoning behind including industrial zones in this?
So that's the current wording of our conditional use permits for the residential and industrial. So the state licensed facilities that are kind of allowed in those more intense uses, that was pre-existing. So if that's something we wanted to look at, we certainly could.
So is that like detox and things like that?
Yep, so, or if it was, you know, I think the group homes, if it's more than 8 residents, it has to go through a conditional use permit process. The daycares and daycare centers with more amounts of children.
So this would allow for like a daycare center, sorry, I thought that was on silent. This would allow for a daycare center to be in an industrial zone, basically.
Yep, and that already exists today.
Right,
Yep.
so it's keeping that.
Yep.
I guess I can see daycare in commercial. I struggle a little bit with a group home in commercial. You know, I mean, like that's where I'm kind of having a hard time with it too.
Right, I mean, and it's, we have other zoning areas for, you know, residential purposes, I guess. I'm just asking for the clarification on why, if there was something specific in the industrial zone right now that they were necessarily targeting as a transitional housing.
No, not to my knowledge.
In other communities similar to our size, are they allowing something like this in a commercial zone?
I can't say that I really looked too much into that specifically. Again, if we wanted to look at that a little bit more in depth about how that section is worded, and also, you know, maybe taking a look at those other items that are in that list currently, that's certainly something that we can do.
Okay. What is the wish of the commission? even if we say we pull commercial out, the protected classes, the government agencies, if they wanted a group home in commercial, it could still land there, is that correct?
So I think with the language that's in there now, it doesn't say commercial, it says industrial. So
industrial,
that
I'm sorry,
would,
I'm sorry.
right, that would exclude any of the business zones that we have. So we would have to just sort of rearrange the wordings a little bit for what we would be looking to do. So we could add a letter C, instead of calling this a B2, just add everything that we have in C and just do residential. If that made sense, I can take out a Word document if that's helpful too.
Preferences, thoughts?
So like, obviously we have the B2 zone downtown with several apartments above there. River Inn is zone B2, correct?
B3.
B3. So why is the B business zoning excluded from this when there's obviously residential housing taking place there? It just seems backwards that we'd exclude business zoning and include industrial zoning to have housing.
We can
Just-
certainly include it.
Looking for clarification, I guess, or why that was intentionally left off, or maybe it wasn't intentional. But
No, I wouldn't say it was intentional. So the permitted uses, the way that black text that you see, that's currently in our zoning code. And I was not on staff when that change, to this permitted uses was made. So I unfortunately don't have that clarification for you at this time.
Kelsey, do you want to speak at all to the group that worked on this and reasoning behind any of this, or was this really not discussed?
It wasn't discussed because that was already there. It wasn't anything we were adding.
Correct.
So to me, that almost seems like a separate issue, separate from the addition of this. Karin, did you say we could add a C? How would you propose?
Correct. So if you didn't want to if you still wanted to proceed with this and maybe just revisit the residential industrial tie, to the daycares and all that, instead of having this as, paragraph 2, we just call that C. And so we can say in all residential, business, industrial zones, we can say all residential zones, whatever the wish of the commission is. But those would be the two options, either table it to do some additional research and maybe handle both those updates at the same time, or maybe just add this transitional housing as its own separate thing in that 154.046.
So if we did the C and we made this just residential, how would that affect like our residential treatment facilities that are in commercial zones right now?
So it wouldn't do anything because you would be leaving letters A and B alone.
Okay.
And again, that's sort of like a state statute thing that's sort of outside of.
Okay. Someone want to make a motion, make
Well,
a suggestion?
I mean, you could essentially open it up to all zoning districts, being that it's a conditional use permit anyway, right? I mean, they'd have to come and basically state their case why the facility that they want to use makes good sense.
Yep, correct.
So, I mean, we'd essentially would be including all zoning, not limiting it just to residential and industrial.
Once it's allowed by conditional use permit, we can't say no to it. We can only put conditions on it though, correct?
It's not that you can't say no to it, it's just if it meets the requirements, right? If they meet A, B, C, D, and, well, E is kind of more for after the fact, but if they meet these 4 conditions, that is to suggest approval.
Is everything already included though? Because if it says all residential and industrial zones and districts, would districts hit the business?
No, so it's because it doesn't say business, it's excluding any B zone.
So if someone met all the other requirements, I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here, had a building downtown on Main Street that they wanted to turn into housing, transitional housing for this, this could be, an extra Victor Lundin's technically?
I couldn't quite catch that.
I mean, I'm just trying to track, could we end up, if we put all business zones in here, could we end up on Main Street with a main floor transitional housing unit right on Main Street, technically by code? I think we would.
Sure,
Yeah.
if they.
If they met the other requirements, yeah.
Mhm.
I think we have. I don't know if we currently have, but we've had transitional housing in the downtown area in the past.
I'm just,
Right. Yeah.
okay, not my call, so you guys, somebody else.
I guess I'm comfortable just leaving it as is and defining employee. I don't know. I would think that maybe there was some reason why it wasn't added in there in the first place, because the other ones are listed. It doesn't say.
The business zones, are you talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, one of the issues that I would think partly with some transitional housing is residents don't have cars, and so being downtown is an advantage.
That's a very
sometimes
good point.
for people in transitional housing.
And this is more staff transitional housing than it is people in individual subsidized apartments that are transitional.
Right, so there would be a difference between,
Right.
what HRA is proposing.
Right,
and what
versus
transitional housing
like
is.
this.
Mhm.
So do we have anyone that wants to make a motion one way or another on this?
I don't think you opened and closed your.
Oh, I'm sorry. Karin came back up, so I assumed we were closed. We should close the public hearing, unless anyone else would like to talk. No.
I think you never opened.
Oh, did I never open it? Sorry.
Yeah, you jumped into
waiting here
questions,
today.
which is totally
We will
fine. but,
open the public hearing. Would anyone like to talk to this item? Any thoughts? Natalia, any thoughts with downtown or any business district concerns or daycare or anything like that?
No, I would just maybe question, so the +1 parking space per 2 persons based on occupancy, could that be changed to an individual, per family? Because with the women's transitional housing that's coming up, they may have, what if it's a single mom with 3 kids? She's not gonna have a need for 2 cars.
Okay.
That could be something to consider.
Maybe it should say per 2 adults.
Per 2 adults.
Per
Oh, is it for
2.
2 adults? Is that
Well,
what-
no.
No, if maybe it
it's
could,
not.
is what Kelsey was
Oh,
saying, yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point.
2 adults, or yeah, just based on family. As for, downtown, obviously not necessarily highest and best use to have transitional housing on the main floor, so you could put in, it would have to be 2nd floor or higher. Just
In business
just to
districts.
maintain the tax base.
Right. I think if it's in a business district, 2nd floor or higher, that's not a bad idea.
And just to clarify,
In that B3 zone, don't forget that a conditional use permit is required for main floor. So someone by right wouldn't be able to create housing in the B3 district downtown,
Okay.
just as a clarifying point.
Okay.
And just with respect to Natalia's comments about the parking, people will come and go from this facility, and so it would be challenging, I think, to enforce parking, by family, because when the facility first opens, you may have X amount of families, but that may change throughout time. So usually when we evaluate parking, the only time that we're doing that is at the building permit stage and a change of use stage. So sort of tying it to the occupancy load of the building kind of ensures that throughout the life cycle of the housing, that would be fully accommodated for.
So would identifying it as adults work in that process, or is the occupancy going to be a complete mix?
But again, the adults and mix of children may change
change.
throughout.
Okay. Anyone else want to speak during the public hearing, which is currently open? No? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back here. Thoughts?
What if we modify B to say, and business districts, 2nd floor or above? and then modify the employee part at the bottom. That says something about like, one parking spot for each employee on duty based on the standard number of people per shift or whatever, was something more concise than that. That's not a motion, that's, those are just rambling thoughts.
So just to pull up, or not, I don't know. Fantastic. So that's not responding. I was going to pull up our zoning code, because there are other things in that B that adding that business would affect.
Oh, okay.
So that's like the conditional use permits for more than, 8 folks in a group home or 6 folks in a group home, daycare centers, things like that.
So could we, what is everybody's thoughts on whether we can handle this separately or if this should all be handled?
I mean, I would not be opposed to moving forward with the bottom 2 parts and not, or moving forward with the changes and the definition changes, changing the parking piece, and then coming through and redoing this. But then you need to do public postings again if we change if we change B, don't we, at a second time? So it's more money.
Right. If you're looking to make some changes, I can talk with Rolf, but likely another public hearing would be warranted, since we would be, I think we maybe felt a little bit more confident at the last meeting, which is okay to, have these discussions, but, I think if we're going to be kind of changing where, it would be allowed, another public hearing would be good.
I can go either way on leaving it or adding it.
What if we left B how it is, because that affects other things, and I'm not even sure everything that's under there. Make instead of 2, make it a C, and say permitted in all residential and industrial zones and business districts, 2nd floor or above. Like almost copy B into C, and then put the transitional housing under that one, so that we're not messing with the other one at this time.
Fun, doable?
Yep.
Okay. Thoughts on that idea? Have we lost people, or are people tracking what we're doing?
Yeah, I'm lost, because when you say move B into C, I'm not
No.
seeing C.
Just
2.
2, where it says 2 transitional housing, that would actually be C, or maybe that would be 1. I don't know.
Okay.
No, it would be C,
It would
correct.
be C, and then
Okay.
we would take the language from B, like B would just stay how it is, because there are other things under there. And then we'd use that same language from B, but modify it to say, and business districts, 2nd floor or above.
Okay,
So that just applied directly to the transitional housing.
okay.
What you're not seeing on this document is all the other things under B. There's a whole list of other stuff. Is that right?
That's correct, yes. I was, just trying to show the changes that were being made, but I think that probably caused more confusion, so.
Gotcha.
I would be agreeable to what Kelsey's suggesting personally. I don't know if others are. We want to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Do you want to turn that into a motion?
So moved, and add a definition under,
Parking
just say for each employee on duty,
per shift? Or just duty, on duty?
on duty,
On duty?
or average number of employees on duty at one time or something.
Okay.
Because like you, Karen said, this is only going to be looked at when they initially open.
Do we have an understanding of what the motion is? Is everyone understanding what we're talking about and what the motion is? Okay. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Okay. Any other discussion? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for working on that committee too, Kelsey. Staff update.
Yes, I guess one follow-up question that I had is whether or not the Planning Commission would be interested in the future in revisiting that letter B, because that's certainly something we can do. So maybe allowing for some of those larger daycares in something like a business zone. That's certainly something that we can look into and come back with if you're
To
interested.
me, the more things we can do to allow more things to happen in Fergus, we need to make it easier.
How does daycare relate to transitional housing? I'm a little confused on that.
Sure. So 154.046, it's kind of just like a catch-all where we talk about things that are permitted in kind of across all the zoning districts of a use category. So normally the way that our zoning code works, it lists each district and it says every single use that's allowed, either, by right or conditional use permit. But instead of having to repeat those things every time that we're just going to kind of blanket allow, we have this category. So letter B is where things like daycare centers that are above a certain number of children, group homes that are above a certain number of residents, have a conditional use permit path in any residential zone or any industrial district. So it's not that it's related to transitional housing, it's just how we were going to allow transitional housing to kind of be a blanket CUP in multiple zones within districts
Okay.
was going to be accomplished.
Okay.
Well, great. I'll, maybe kind of look into that a little bit and see if we can't kind of find some of the history or maybe why that would have been and consider any updates as appropriate.
I don't think we've changed that even since I've been on. So I think that's older. I don't think for Kelsey probably either. So I think it's older wording.
Nothing would surprise me about that. So, and I did manage to find the original 1965 zoning code the other day, and
Fun stuff.
I think I could answer probably about 75% of questions still with that old copy. So, as far as other staff updates, you may have noticed a blue binder on your spot. So those were the promised just training materials, just some informational about zoning, subdivision, things that might come before the Planning Commission, kind of the specific context of Fergus Falls. We've never used this before, so please send me any feedback you have about it, because we love it when people read it and offer comments about how to make it better. The other thing is for our April meeting, we have 4 public hearing cases scheduled. And there may also be a discussion item as well related to home occupation permits if we can fit it in. So just as a heads up for that meeting. Otherwise, those are the updates I have. Jill, did I maybe forget anything from Clara for staff updates? Okay. That's what I have.
Perfect. Thank you. Anything, questions for staff? Nope. If not, a motion to adjourn. Perfect. Beth, thank you, everybody.
Karen, can we take the binders over?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, please.
Okay.